So we're going to take a look at the argument itself. What's an argument? How to write an argument. I know you've had this in English 100, or at least you have a background in writing argument or persuasive essays. But I want to talk specifically about what we're going to call um, an argument essay with a twist. And that twist is going to be that you're going to present the opposite side a little more cleanly than you're used to doing. So let's take a quick look at what the Aristotelian approach to arguments is. Aristotle had this triangle, and some of you have seen this triangle, which breaks everything down into the message, the speaker, and the audience. So the speaker has a message. That message has to be given to the audience, and it's wrapped with this whole thing of context. And context is the circumstances that form the setting for the event or the statement or the idea or whatever you're talking about, what this argument's all about, in which it can be fully understood and assessed by the readers. So you have to keep in mind what your purpose is. What is your purpose? What's your aim, your goal for creating this message? So a persuasive essay has some very distinct parts to it. First, you have to take a look at the purpose. Your purpose as the writer is to take a stand, to persuade the readers of your stand. Your audience purpose, they want some kind of consideration of the issue. They want to know what's important to them, and they want to understand it. So in order to do so, you have to give it to them in a clearly stated claim with a lot of support. And that support will come from your source information as well as your own analysis of that data. The context that we're talking about is that effective writers consider the opposing point of view and seek common ground. And that's what we're going to talk about in great detail now. And of course, the source, where you're getting your source support, is what we're calling the ethos, the appeal to readers' reason, their emotions, their trust. You have to get them to come along with your point of view. And that can come from either your personal point of view, your observation, your documents, and your resources. Your role then is an advocate. You are their analysis arm. You're their reader who takes all this data and understands it and gives it back to them in a way that they can understand it. The message, of course, is what we call logos. Logos is a clear issue statement. What it is, what's the background about it, what are we talking about, what's the importance, who's it important to, and then you take a stand on that issue. What is your position? It's clear, it's unequivocal, you're not going to waver on it, and it's where you stand, and you need to tell the reader exactly that that's what this is. Now, how do you support that? You support it with evidence, and that evidence has to support the position you're taking. It has to be logically derived, and it has to present your position as being a logical position to take. So your support for the evidence in the form of source material, data, outside sources is what's called your citations. And so we're going to go into that later on. Structure is simple. You take a position because of reasons. Here are the reasons, and one of the ways you could do that is because of this, because of that, and because of that, I come to the following conclusion. Or I take this position because of this, that, and that. That's the structure of an argument statement. Now, Rogerian, Carl Rogers, a psychologist, came up with Rogerian arguments, and these arguments are non-confrontational arguments. A lot of our arguments that I've seen in college, especially from the early writers, is confrontational. It's kind of a defiant kind of attitude. And what Rogers says is that the lack of a worldview makes no confrontational discourse impossible. So if you have confrontational discourse, it's not going to be possible to come up with a total buy-in of that. So his position is that argumentation that seeks to understand and acknowledge another person's point of view, seeking common ground on highly controversial topics, promotes and makes possible productive communication. So how does that play out? So let me say that in other words. There's a phrase out there that I like to use, and that is seek first to understand. So you know that you're going into a controversial topic, you're going to take a position on that controversy. And by the way, by the nature of a controversy is there are two possible sides to that, at least two possible sides to that. And so you're going to take a position, and you want to have your readers buy into your position with your evidence, but also you have to show them sincerely that you've studied all sides of the argument and you have given some credence to the opposing side to your own, and you've come up with your argument based on that research. So we have to examine the other side, and it's called a counter argument. We thoroughly examine the opposite position to our own. Thoroughly examine the opposite position to our own. So if I take a stand on something, and I know that other people feel very differently about it, I'm going to examine how they feel about it, which gives me the ability to either change my mind or have a stronger position in support of my own. So we're going to present the opponent's views accurately and objectively to our readers. We're going to present our own views just as objectively, and we're going to examine the common ground between us. There's always some kind of common ground. Where can we meet? Where do we agree? I know we feel this way, I know we feel that way. And let's take it to the most ridiculous argument that I can think of right now, and that is the argument going on between the radical right and the progressive left in this country. The political argument. I know you're tired of hearing it, so am I, but it's a good one. It works for this, so give me a break on it, okay? So what we're going to say is that on the radical right side, the argument kind of says we are taking back our country, we're going to make it great again. We've gotten to the point where it's not so great, and we've given away the store pretty much, and now we're going to take the store back. We're going to become the great America that we always were. On the other side, what we're saying is we have to get along in this world, and your position took us to the brink of disaster with all of the blowing up of the World Trade Center and all the hatred that we're getting from Muslim countries, and the position that we're taking on immigration is all bad. So we're going to take the opposite, and we're going to embrace it. At the same time, we need to fix all of the things with the ecology that we've destroyed, and we need to fix all the things with our economy that we've destroyed. And then back on the right side, what they're saying is, yeah, the ecology is based on fraud. It's based on fake science. And so what it does, if we do all this stuff like limiting what you can put out in gaseous emissions from a car, or not being able to take oil out of the ground when we need it, etc., by doing all of those things, we've put our country in a very bad position. Businesses have gone to other countries where they can do it. All of our manufacturing has left America, and we did that because we gave them so many restrictions they couldn't operate anymore. So you can see all these different reasons we can't agree. This is the reasons we can't agree. Okay, what can we agree on? Both sides love America. Politicians will all tell you that, whether it's true or not. They'll all tell you we love our country and we're doing this for our country. And I took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and defend and protect it against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So they both took the same oath. They both care the same amount. And they both will tell you, I am doing this for my constituents. So, okay, so they're both doing it because they love the country, and they're both doing it for their constituents. Okay, how can we work together? How can we work together on those things? That's called common ground. So what did we do? We're seeking first to understand. So the left, the progressive left, should take the time and try to understand the radical right, and the radical right should take the time to understand the progressive left. And by the way, I don't think these labels are helping progressive and radical. You know, it's the right and the left. It's the conservative and the liberal. So let's think in those terms. Your own thesis on any question, on any argument, has to be a compromise between the two. You have to really understand both sides of an argument and then come up with your compromise between the two sides of the argument, which will make it believable, which will make it credible, and which will make it powerful. So, the Tolman model, which was designed in 1958 to analyze courtroom arguments, is probably the most effective way to do this. In the Tolman model, we go back to this Aristotelian kind of triangle. We start with the subject, and the subject has to be read to an audience, has to be open to an audience by a writer. And so you have these same three, the writer, the subject, and the audience. Of course, you have all the other same things too, don't you? You have a need for information, you have a need for being aware of a context, and you have a need for finding that common ground. So, between the writer and the subject, the writer has to make a claim, what this writer is saying about the subject. So the claim is what the writer is saying about the subject. If the question is, do college students prefer hamburgers or pizza? And if the writer's taken their analysis and they come up with the answer being pizza, the claim will be that college students prefer pizza over hamburgers. That's the claim. The assumption is what the audience has to believe in order to accept that claim. So they have to believe that I did the actual study. They have to believe that I took enough of a survey so that I don't have a small model, so that it's not just 50 students trying to represent the whole of the American student population. So we have a valid study, and we have to say that the writer is not biased against hamburgers, that the writer is open-minded about what kind of food students eat. So there are a lot of value judgments that go in there, biases that go in there, and we're going to talk about those later on this coming week. So this is the Tolman model. Now, the support is what the writer uses to back up the claim. I'm going to make my claim, and I'm going to say that it's not just my opinion, because that would be an op-ed. I want to tell you that this is a supportable, factually supported claim, and that's where we have this support down here, what I'm offering the audience to back it up. So what I'm trying to prove usually is the thesis statement, those things that the reader have to take for granted, that have to be presented for the claim to be valid, and the evidence, appeals, needs and values. So you have to give all the evidence to support a very clearly stated thesis statement, and the believability has to be in there based on your values, based on what the readers think about you as a writer, based upon what they see you having done with your assignment. So if you've done a good job with the research, if you've analyzed the research logically, and you've come up with a clear claim, and you can support that claim with clear evidence, appeals to need, and values, and they can buy into the assumptions that you're pretty good for this, then you've won the battle. So to follow up on this particular presentation, I want you to go to the handbook, pages 58 through 60, to understand a little bit more about this seek first to understand mentality. Basically, what I want to say to you is, when you're coming up with an answer to a thesis question, and let's say that the question is very clearly, should college students eat hamburger or pizza? And I'm sorry for the simplicity of this, I don't want it to get in the way. Very clearly they should eat pizza over hamburgers, and you have to prove to them why you did that. I want you first, as a writer, to look at both sides with an open mind. When I ask the question, should they eat pizza or should they eat hamburgers, most of us will say, oh, they should eat the following, and that's going to be my personal preference, obviously. If I happen to like pizza first, I'm going to say they should eat pizza. If I happen to like hamburgers, I'm going to say they should eat hamburgers. Try not to do that. Try not to get your own preferences in the way of coming up with your claim. only let the evidence drive the claim. Because if you don't, then what you've done is you've just gone out and tried to prove what you already believe to be true. May or may not be right, but you've gone out to try to convince the world of it. You haven't learned anything. They haven't learned anything. All they're hearing is your personal opinion based on and supported by what may or may not be faulty evidence. Okay? All right, so I want you to go to page 58 and 60 through 60 in your handbook and study that.